The Film Talk is brought to you by you, folks who listen and help out. Just go to patreon.com/the Film Talk for details. And now, on with the show.
Oh my goodness, friends, listeners, because you all are friends. You're all friends to
countrymen,
us.
country people.
Has there been a film more designed to be talked about on the Film Talk than the new Agatha Christie thriller, Murder on Conclave, Murder on the Conclave Express? I cannot wait to talk about this astounding film, astounding for many reasons. It's going to be a big reveal later on the show about something that happened to me while I was watching the film, dear listeners. Folks, welcome to the Film Talk. I'm Jett Lowe.
I'm Gareth Higgins. The conversation never ends, and I'm excited to talk about this film, Conclave. Edward Berger or Berger, I don't know how you pronounce this, forgive me, director of the recent version of All Quiet on the Western Front, has made an adaptation of Robert Harris's novel that I guess you could call a cloak and dagger novel, although there's no daggers, there are some cloaks, set in the Vatican when an elderly pope has died and the conclave of the cardinals has been convened. Lots of C's in that sentence. They've been put into, I don't know, do they call it quarantine, isolation, hived off from the rest of the world.
They're sequestered.
Sequestered, yes, to deliberate, to discern, to vote on papal succession. And in this film, you've got your Ralph Fiennes as referee. You've got John Lithgow as
in the John Lithgow role.
In the John Lithgow role, and what a role that is! You've got Stanley Tucci as Aldo, best friend to the referee, and a bit of a ruminator. You have Isabella Rossellini as the answer. And you really have an enormous cast of people, often wearing these long red robes, having serious conversations in what I'm happy to say up front is one of the most sheerly entertaining films of the year. And disguised within that entertainment is something genuinely profound.
That's right.
And I believe we have a clip.
We do have a clip, dear listeners. By the way, Gareth, I've only said this a few times in our 16, 18, 25-year history of the show. Gareth is completely correct. This film is so entertaining. While watching it, I was literally saying to myself throughout, silently, not out loud, it's kind of a packed audience, this is really entertaining in a way that films used to be. And we can talk about that. This is an old-fashioned movie. It's a movie for adults who remember when films were a big thing. We got a clip here. We got Stanley Tucci and Ralph Fiennes. They're outside. They're both cardinals. They're outside, kind of a sepulchral. Is that a word? Sepulchral?
You've just coined it. You've just coined it. This film is about change and newness and acceptance of new things. So please make it sepulchral.
Yes, they're in a dark room outside. The sealed by the wax seal and red ribbons sealed outside the death room of the Pope. It's lit by votive candles. Beautiful cinematography in this film. I'll talk about that later. We got this clip, and they're discussing what they have to do to elect a new pope. And listen to this clip, dear listeners, and I want you to think of your comfort food. Do you have something like maybe it's a ham sandwich with a lot of cheese? Because let's be honest here, this is an entertaining film, but boy, there's a lot of cheese in this bad boy. Robert Harris writes the thinking person's airport thriller, and that's what this is. Let's listen to Tucci and Fiennes and Tucci, as they talk about the stakes and how to elect a new pope.
I thought we had your support. If we liberals are not united, Tedesco will become pope. You have no idea how bad it became, Thomas. The way he and his circle attacked the Holy Father towards the end. The smears, the leaks to the press, it was savage. He fought him every single day of his pontificate. And now that he's dead, he wants to destroy his life's work. If Tedesco becomes pope, he will undo 60 years of progress.
You talk as if you're the only alternative, but Adeyemi has the wind behind him.
Adeyemi? Adeyemi, the man who believes that homosexuals should be sent to prison in this world and hell in the next. Adeyemi's not the answer to anything, and you know it. If you want to defeat Tedesco...
This is a conclave, Aldo. It's not a war.
It is a war. And you have to commit to a side.
And that was Conclave, which in addition to the actors we've already named, I mean, it really does have an extraordinary cast. Sergio Castellito, Lucian Mizamati, and an actor I'd never seen before called Carlos Diaz. I hope I'm pronouncing their name correctly. And I do want to say up front, for Jett and I to be able to talk about this film meaningfully, there's going to be spoilers. And we both, I think we could say, loved this film.
Yes.
We haven't talked to each other yet. We're not sure if we loved it for the same reasons.
True.
Jett has teased on the Film Talks Facebook site that something profound happened to him during the film. He has not yet told me what that was, but we want to say to you, dear listener, the film is so enjoyable and so surprising in terms of some elements of its plot. We would like you to go see it and press pause in about 7 seconds and not listen to any more of this
Do not listen to us
until you've been to see it, and we'll be here when you get back. So let's just pause here, and hope you go and enjoy the movie wherever you go to see it, and we will see you when you return.
Okay, and hopefully the listener, dear listener out there, has seen Conclave and enjoyed it. And now we're back. Gareth, take it away.
Back indeed. Okay, so this film for me is 50% 7 Days in May. It's 40% The Godfather Part 3 in the Vatican sections, and it's 10% John Waters' Hairspray. And I mean that all as an absolute compliment, as we've already mentioned. It's a crowd pleaser. What you used to call a crowd pleaser.
Absolutely,
but not in the same way that True Lies is a crowd pleaser. It's a crowd pleaser.
I kind of wish Tom Arnold was one of the Cardinals. But we can talk. Hey, can we just mention very, very briefly? So
yes. I miss Art Malik.
We all do. Is he still with us?
He's around. Yes, he's in Disclaimer, Alfonso Cuarón's new show on Apple TV.
Awesome. Here's the thing about the castings. I knew nothing about this film, Gareth, dear listener. I go in cold. I had no idea who was in it. I'm like, what? Isabella Rossellini? What? Ralph Fiennes? Tucci? Lithgow. And then the great thing about Tucci, Lithgow, and Fiennes is, remember that Danny Boyle stage production of Frankenstein? You had Benedict Cumberbatch. You see where I'm going here?
James McAvoy.
You had
was it James McAvoy?
No, it was the other guy.
It was the other guy.
It was Benedict Cumberbatch and the guy from Trainspotting.
Oh, Johnny.
Yeah, that guy. And here's the thing: on alternate nights,
who used to be married to Angelina Jolie.
Why am
I not remembering this, guys? We're getting older.
But here's the thing. Here's my point. One plays Frankenstein, the other plays Frankenstein's monster, and they would alternate roles, right?
Yes.
So one night Cumberbatch,
Johnny Lee
Frankenstein.
Miller. Johnny Lee Miller.
One day it would be Cumberbatch, and then it would be Frankenstein. The next day it would be Johnny Lee Miller, and that's how I feel about Conclave. Fiennes, Tucci, and Lithgow could all play the other parts.
You did mention Isabella Rossellini in the same breath, and I'm not sure that it would work if Isabella was playing.
Well, it kind of
the
did.
Roles. Although spoilers.
It kind of did.
Well, even that. By the way, my understanding is that Ralph Richardson and John Gielgud used to do the same as Johnny Lee Miller and Benedict Cumberbatch when they were in Othello together. That they would alternate roles from night to night. And I think some actors have done the same thing. Maybe John C. Reilly and Philip Seymour Hoffman did it in Sam Shepard's True West.
They did. They absolutely did do it in True West. And that it can sound like a gimmick, but the point is that all of these actors are so good that you can completely see Tucci with the sensitive side doing the Ralph Fiennes role. Or Lithgow would have been amazing. Lithgow would have been amazing.
It's funny. I don't know, because I felt that I mean, it's such an A team here of actors. And again, it includes the three who are not very well known.
Yes.
Certainly not very well known internationally. And they're at the top of their game.
Yes.
And yet, to me, Ralph Fiennes really is the standout, and I couldn't imagine anybody else playing.
Well, he's our protagonist, though. So I mean, we start the film looking at the back of his head, and we follow him in. So we are him.
Correct.
right? So you've seen Enter the Void, right, where you go into the back of the head of the protagonist.
This is a more pleasant experience than that, and has something more life-affirming to say.
Yes.
What's so lovely about this film? You've said that it's cheese, but it is the highest class.
Absolutely,
cheese. It is a charcuterie board, and what you find when you're sampling this is there is a whole lot going on under the surface that's genuinely profound around two particular questions, and they're both referred to explicitly in the film. This film has two sermons in it. As you know, I'm married to a clergy person. I'm married to a minister, and one of the things that Brian is always looking for, and I'm always looking for in cinema and TV portrayals of religion, is something even just half plausible. Half plausible would be good. It's rare that there's a portrayal of a clergy person that actually feels like a real clergy person. Often they're either portrayed as ethereal, their feet really aren't on the ground, or they don't actually have a real life. It's pretty rare to see a clergy person who's experiencing their ministry as a vocation and a calling, and I don't want to call it the flaws, but just call it the full circle experience of being a human show up in that world. I'll give you a negative example and a positive example. Negative example, opening scene, I think I've mentioned this before in the show, opening scene of Michael Cimino's film Thunderbolt and Lightfoot has Clint Eastwood pretending to be a pastor in a country church, but he's dressed in black clergy wear with a ministry collar, which absolutely is not a function of independent country churches in the United States. It's just, it would be like saying that the Empire State Building is in Paris. You know, it's just so far.
Yes, they didn't care. In Thunderbolt, Lightfoot is not a film dedicated to verisimilitude.
This is true. This is true. On the other hand, the Catherine Hahn character in the TV show Transparent was one of the most realistic, credible portrayals of a rabbi I'd ever seen, precisely because she was shown to have a daily life in addition to the sermons she preaches, the kind of, let's call it the kind of technical pastoral work she does. She has wants, she makes mistakes, she has needs. I believed about the cardinals in this film that they were real people. They weren't feet fully off the ground. I mean, they're living in this totally elevated context, and they are, as you say, sequestered, quarantined from the rest of the world. But the needs of the world are right there in the room with them, not just when the windows break as a result of a terrorist bomb, but the two sermons that get preached in this film. The first one about certainty is the enemy of faith, and the second one about the whole frigging point of ministry, of service, of community is to teach people and to embody and learn together how to love your neighbor as yourself. And that if there's a God, or even if there isn't a kind of an animating divine force outside humanity or embodied deeply within humanity, the evolution of the human brain and of community teaches us to hold our absolutism very, very loosely. And you know authority when you see it. That's all I'll say for now about
basically
this delightful charcuterie board that's a lot deeper than it might sound if we just called it a high-class piece of cheese.
Well, I think what you're saying is like, what if the Da Vinci Code, but good?
It's more than that. It's more than that.
No, but here's the thing.
I like the, you know, it's funny. Yes. I like the Da Vinci Code, and what the Da Vinci Code is trying to say about women is actually very similar to what Conclave is trying to say about who's in and who's out.
Great double bill. This film makes it wears everything on its sleeve. It's very explicit, but in a way that, again, why is the film pleasurable, and why I think the listeners who love movies and know a little bit about the history of movies and know how films work with film grammar and what have you, while they'll find it pleasurable, is because it uses traditional film grammar to make explicit the themes that you're talking about. So you alluded to, oh yeah, there's a bomb goes off and a shaft of light comes in, windows break. This has happened because why does this happen? The terrorist set off a bomb? No, it happens because Ralph Fiennes gives in to vanity and temptation and writes his own name on a slip of paper. And as soon as he puts in his vote for himself, then as if from the heavens, God comes down. And that's, that is it's ridiculous, but it's wonderful because in the context of the film, because the film starts off, I mentioned Enter the Void, the shots of the back of the head with Ralph Fiennes. The film starts off saying this film is going to use traditional film grammar to exculpate and demonstrate the relationships between the characters, and we're going to love doing it. The cinematography, you might say, is heavy-handed, is over the top, but it's also beautiful. In my day job here, when I'm not on the Film Talk, though, really isn't the Film Talk my life.
You're a secretly appointed Archbishop, yes?
It's possible. It's possible. There's many secrets, many of them in Latin.
Improctore, is that what it's called?
That's what my doctor told me I need to do. I'm getting older. So the thing, here's my point. So I do, I edit video, I shoot video during the day. And now we have modern tools, that were sort of brought about by the Coen brothers, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, where we're going to scan in the film and then we'll digitally color correct, not just color correct,
yes,
but digitally grade it to give it a certain look. And if you watch Oh Brother, Where Art Thou now, it's groundbreaking and it does come across kind of heavy-handed with the color grading. But my point is, ever since we're able to put the film into the digital realm, it's easier and less time-consuming to do sort of post-production cinematography. So one of the things that people can do, and they do this all the time, if you're doing low-budget productions, is you can mask off the figures. By mask off, I mean you've got somebody in the foreground that's your protagonist or someone that's the center of the scene. You can change their exposure levels separate from the background to give them more prominence. In the old days, like your Gordon Willis, maybe everything would be black in the Las Vegas house in Godfather 2. It might be a little ray of light. Now you can also do that in post. And it looked to me, at least the version that I saw, projected digitally, of course, when I saw Conclave, that they were doing this to an extent that most modern films wouldn't have. And they're doing it, you could be argued heavy-handedly, but it worked.
Yeah, there's a fine line between heavy-handed and elegant, and I think it's just on the right side of elegant.
You're absolutely right. It's just on that side of elegant, and it really works. So at the end of the film, in a scene that's analogous to Ralph Fiennes gives into temptation, vanity, God, explosion, comes down.
I absolutely didn't read that scene that way, by the way, but that's all right.
All right. You're wrong.
So the film the cosmology of the film doesn't believe in that kind of God.
You have a good heart. Well, but it's based on a Robert Harris book. So folks know this is airport thrillers, and they're great. Fatherland, the counterfactual,
Enigma.
What if the Nazis won
Enigma?
the war? What's that?
I hope he wrote Enigma.
He wrote Enigma, Fatherland, Archangel, Stalin. Don't give away spoilers.
He wrote a book called Ooh, Stalin, Stalin.
That's the musical version. It's a nudie cutie.
I think Richard Attenborough directed that in 1968 with Michael Crawford.
From the producers of Oh, Calcutta. I disagree with you about that. I mean, again, that's one of the things that made me laugh
Let's
out
not hold
loud
our certainty too deeply.
Well, let's talk about the homily in a second. Because at the end of the film, what happens? He rescues a turtle. These turtles get out, and they're very smart, but they get out and they get killed, run over. Yes. So as soon as he places the turtle back in its pool, that's when he hears the crowd outside cheer.
Yeah.
Right. So this gives evidence to what I'm saying. It's not subtle, but that's okay because it's telling you right from the start it's not subtle. It's saying luxuriate in the old-fashioned filmmaking. Can I just talk? I just mentioned, because I did mention on social media that I had this experience.
Something you said almost profound. What's the difference between almost profound and actually profound?
It's a fine line. Like
that was. Somebody
over the top and elegance.
I'm not sure I want to get into politics, but there was a U.S. American elected representative who referred to a terrible event that happened earlier in the summer in which somebody nearly died, and as a semi-miraculous event. And when I read that, I thought, this person's completely sincere.
Yes,
and they're acting in good faith, and they're talking about an event that was traumatic for them as an observer to it, and it brought into sharp relief the superficiality of theological discourse and of kind of metaphysical discourse that happens in the world. He's reaching for language. To me, it felt a little bit like an inverted echo of a thing that you were saying to me nearly 20 years ago about the reason why there's conspiracy. And I want to get back to your profound thing.
Sure.
I want to
Near
get
profound.
the reason there's conspiracy theories about 9/11 are because it is more terrifying for many people to live with the horror that it just took 19 guys to hijack a plane, and that there's a kind of that there's no individual in charge, there's no system in charge, or at least the systems that say they're in charge are not as in charge as they would like to think, or they would like us to think. So this guy was acting in good faith, talking about a traumatic event, and I was like, man, I'd like to have a conversation with you about what's the difference between a semi-miraculous event and a miraculous event, and what is it you really need to reassure yourself in order to live in this often insecure, frightening world. It seems to me what you're talking about.
The person. It's in it's how they experience it. There's a great German film about a real life possession, the exorcism. Do you know what I'm talking about? Maybe it's in the last 20 years. And a woman gets possessed, or her family thinks she's possessed, and she has to be exorcised. Gosh, folks, dear listeners, one of our listeners will know what it is. And there's a scene in that film in which her family's around her. Maybe there's a priest they're trying to get the demon out of her. No, by the way, the film is not saying there is a demon. This is someone perhaps dealing with mental illness. And the boyfriend of the woman.
You're talking about The Exorcism of Emily Rose, which is an American film based on something that happened in Germany.
Okay, possibly. It's quite possible.
Yeah.
There's a great scene in which maybe we talked about on our old show, in which the boyfriend is watching The Exorcism, and he's just, he's in horror. He can't believe these people are buying into it, or believe these things. Much like people can't believe that someone thinks that Christ pushed a bullet an inch away so that Donald Trump wasn't shot. But the thing is, watching that scene that does so well is that it makes clear that for the family, this is real. So for them, it is miraculous. They're in that realm of wonder, because that is the system in which they live. They're ensconced in that system of the miraculous, right? Just as the person who would believe that there is a divine force that saved Donald Trump. But we can talk about the miraculous. We can talk about.
So what was your almost profound experience?
What do you think it was? That's a big question.
I wondered if it was. I wondered. You did say to me that you wished you hadn't predicted the twist early on, because I think that you were indicating you would have enjoyed the film more.
I've seen a lot of movies, and if you have, you will. There's two twists. There's a twist which everybody will see coming, and it's such an obvious twist that you'll think, oh, they're not really going to do that. And what I'm talking about, again, spoilers, is that the cardinal from
the Mexican cardinal, who's the Archbishop of Kabul,
he'll become the Pope, right? So that's the first. The second twist is that he's intersex. He intersects, yeah. And I wish I had not guessed those right away. So
interesting. There's at least two other twists.
It's Agatha Christie,
and I think one of them is more credible than the other. I think the
crowd pleaser.
The lovely scene when Aldo asks Dean Lawrence, "What name would you take if you were Pope?" and Ralph Fiennes has a name right there, ready and waiting, and you realize, oh, all along he hasn't been angling for the position, but he's just being honest. Of course, I'd like to be Pope. I did think that the kind of going into the Pope's chamber and finding the document embedded in the bedpost. I need to see the film again, because to me it looked like just too much of a Deus Ex Machina that like, oh, he just happens to see that there. However, it's in alignment with what we might assume to have been the deceased Pope's beliefs about certainty, because it turns out the deceased Pope has been engineering all of this from beyond the grave. Like he set it all up to do the best he could to achieve the outcome that he wanted, but he also would have had to have acted in faith and knowing the possibility that it might not work.
It's like those, again, airport thrillers in which like a software engineer, coder, brilliant, like a character has died, and then his machine is living on, and it's setting traps. And it is, I mean, well, watching the film in which he discovers the documents, that to me, was surprising because I thought, well, that's so weak. And then it made me think, because I did have to, just like Civil War, like we talked about in the film Civil War, how did the critics miss it? Maybe all the critics were gone. During the scene in which the reasons for the war are explained in Civil War, I did go out and get a diet Pepsi. And did I miss a scene? Because I thought when he went in to the Pope's bedroom where he died, that he would the clue that would lead him to finding the document would be something to do with the tailoring of the papal garments, because that is explicitly said about, he was the weight problem, so things had to be let out. And so I wonder, did they change that, or am I missing something? Because that was not a red herring. That was not set up. So I think something happened there. Maybe there's a listener out there who can.
And maybe it'll feel different the next time. So what was the almost profound?
Oh, okay. So there's the homily. Talk about the two sermons. The homily that Ray Fiennes gives.
Yes.
And I want to say something to you, Gareth, and I want to say something to the listener. I know I come across as flippant, and I often am, and I use humor as a device. It helps deal with pain, and there's a lot of, we can talk about the origins of comedy and what have you. So I want to be very clear that I am not saying what I'm about to say as a joke. I am completely serious. And even though I'm also going to talk about how I responded to what happened to me during the screening, you might think that is, I don't want to say sacrilegious, or I don't want to insult anyone's faith. As listeners know, probably longtime listeners, I am a man of no faith. I was raised with no faith at all. Never went to church, nothing. You were luxuriated. I don't know if that's the right word. You were inculcated.
I'm a man of too much religion.
You got a lot in there. You got a lot of religion. You're married.
I'll share it with you. I'm willing to share it with you.
Married to a pastor, right? So I'm a person. The closest I would say come to faith is that, I would say, well, mystery. Everything is a mystery. I could take comfort in the unknowable. Right? We think about what are some of the functions of religion. Obviously, the fear of death. We won't try to find meaning. There's that great line in Forbidden Planet. Leslie Nielsen says, we're the mindless primitive. That's why we invented laws, and that's why we have laws in religion. Right?
Are you attempting to bring up Forbidden Planet in every episode?
Absolutely, love that.
Okay,
film.
Good.
The beep to boops.
Beep to boop.
That's a deep cut from a previous episode. Yes. Listener. Okay.
The listener knows.
So mystery. Mystery because, and again, I'm going to sound flippant, and I don't want people to, I want folks to know that I'm serious here. If I look at a dog, you could have the smartest dog in the world. Doesn't matter how smart the dog is. You can't teach this dog calculus. Doesn't matter. So we're evolved to live in the system. We evolved on planet Earth. There's things that are innately, by their very nature, going to be beyond us. We cannot apprehend our reality. That's what gives. That's sort of my my feeling, as it were. I'm not going to say faith. Okay, so I'm a person of no faith, right? No belief in God, any religion that I've ever heard of. Nothing. It's not in me. But when Ray Fiennes gives his homily, like they're going to start voting, he gives his homily to all the cardinals. He says, if there was only, because from the script, if there was only certainty and no doubt, there would be no mystery, and therefore no need for faith. And as he was speaking, Gareth, dear listeners, I felt what I can only imagine people of faith feel. I felt the imminent presence coming, rushing towards me, of what I would only term God and the connection to all things. And I realized in that moment, if I don't stop this, if I don't fight it right now, I'm going to become some sort of person of faith. It's going to happen. I could feel it. I was seconds away from believing in what I can only say, God and a connection of all things. I'm completely serious. Flash Gordon, Topol in Flash Gordon. Ming the Merciless tries to program, uses his henchman played by, was it Peter? Who's the actor, the English actor, Peter?
Peter Wingard.
Peter Wingard. They're going to program his mind. They're going to zap everything out of his mind.
They put a zappy thing on him.
They put out a long thing. It looks kind of like the laser gun from Goldfinger when they're about to zap Sean Connery. They're going to reprogram his mind. And we see Dr. Zarkov losing all of his mind, losing himself so he could be a minion of Ming. And later on, it turns out, no, he's okay. And they asked him, how did you do it? He fought back. And dear listener, I don't want to offend you if you are a person of faith, a deep faith like Gareth. I fought back in that moment from feeling the presence of God and getting into a place of faith and love and gratitude for all things in humanity.
Why?
I don't know. Why? That's the topic for another. This is the prologue.
No, I think that's
a
the topic for the episode.
No,
about
I need to. I
Conclave.
haven't processed. Now. To be fair,
And that's not a criticism. That's a
well,
genuine
I know.
curiosity.
That's a big question. To be fair, dear listeners, Gareth knows this. I had just broken my rib a couple of days previously, and the pain was so great that they did prescribe oxycodone, also known as OxyContin, and it's possible that, like Philip K. Dick, who had that, what was it, wisdom teeth? He has wisdom teeth taken out. He's heavily on drugs, and then he had the experience of the vast active living system, the vallus, and they had his. It's possible that was affected. Again, see, I'm being flippant. It sounds flippant by saying it, but I'm just putting that out there.
Well,
but the film, my point here is the film, even though it is a slice of cheese and it is a pure entertainment, there is the profundity in its bones that can affect even someone as slightly cynical and without faith as myself. Does that make any sense, Gareth?
It does make sense. There's plenty of cynicism in the religious world as well, and to your point about the medications that you were on for your very painful rib. And dear listener, please send thoughts of love and warmth and, dare I say, healing to Jett, because he's pretty banged up, and he's doing the show, I wouldn't say under duress, but in physical discomfort. One thought, not to get into a big theological debate about it, one thought that was intriguing to me in my early days of kind of thinking about faith was, well, what if God made the drugs? So what if there's no possibility of spiraling so far out that we get bigger than the truth? I don't think a God worthy of the name is particularly concerned about you having the right doctrines or the right beliefs. And I think something so lovely about this film is people of faith shouldn't be offended by it. Will actually likely feel affirmed by it. And people who are not people of faith, and I don't like that term, because that can sound like there's a hierarchy. People who don't have religious faith could also feel touched and moved by what the film is saying about human beings. Something that I find so moving and so rare about this film is there aren't really bad guys in it, but if you were to name potential villains of the piece, lowercase v, it's the Italian cardinal
Tedesco.
who's Tedesco, who's anti. He's basically a separatist. He's a separatist, and he's authoritarian. And Lithgow's character, who is by all as far as we can tell, he's kind of got liberal social ideas, but he's still manipulating things from behind the scenes. He's still someone who's not trustable. And the Nigerian archbishop, played by Lucian Mizamati, is portrayed as homophobic, but we don't actually see much else about what he thinks about the world. One could imagine that he's actually on the side of the economically poor. The film doesn't get into the whole question of why what we might call socially conservative or reactionary theology took root, particularly in Africa, as a result of colonial religion. But the scene where Dean Lawrence approaches Archbishop Cardinal Adeyemi and tells him, I'm going to maintain the sanctity of the confessional, and effectively, you need to consider your position.
Yeah.
That is threading an ethical needle in a beautiful way. And the response of the Nigerian archbishop by breaking down in tears and asking him to pray with him, if you step back from that and you were to make an analogy between the theological positions of these two people and electoral political positions, particularly in the US, we're recording this the day before the presidential election. These two people are about as far away as possible to get from each other on the theological scale. And they're sitting effectively holding hands on a bedside, one of them trying to comfort the other. So this movie has conservative bad guys and progressive bad guys. Its position is firmly on the side of the expansion of the vision of love and the inclusion of more people at the center. Isabella Rossellini's character is like absolutely making a case for women priests. And actually, she's not making a case that women should be allowed to be priests. She's making a case that women are already priests. In the same way that if you look at the history of the sociology of health in the UK, there's a lot of work done onto this in the past that showed that nurses who tended to be women, just because of the patriarchal system, and doctors who tended to be men, often find themselves in situations where a nurse that had been a nurse for 20 years clearly knew more about medicine than a doctor who'd only been a doctor for 2 years. And that sometimes nurses wouldn't speak up when they saw a doctor about to make a terrible decision because of, frankly, misogyny and patriarchy. This scene just kind of shatters that. And I simply wanted to name, the film has goodness in everybody, and frankly is inviting everybody in the audience to recognize the goodness in everybody, and that it's a necessary step on that path to give up your certainty about your certainty.
Well, and the certainty about yourself too, and we can think of the certainty in the self as being analogous to the movie tropes. So even the good actors we think are righteous or above it all, like Ralph Fiennes, as you say, oh, it turns out he did have his Pope name ready. Aldo Bellini, played by Stanley Tucci, think this guy is a righteous fighter for progressive causes. And then it's revealed, oh, in a throwaway line by Fiennes, like, well, what did he give you? That he probably took something. There was a quid pro quo so that he would get behind Lithgow once you realize that was the smart political move. You go, I'll go, that he's just, has just the same level. If you want to use the word corruption, he might use a different word. He's like perhaps more living in the real world. So it wants to find the goodness in people, but it also acknowledges that everybody, except maybe the innocent one, everyone is flawed. And I was on your train, Gareth, talking about the center, the holding hands, that this film could really do something, bring people together. But while you were talking, I happened to be looking at some IMDb comments from reviews of the film, and I'm just going to read one. It's very short. Someone has just posted this on IMDb for Conclave.
Yes.
The username thirst-48262. So thirst-48262 writes, IMDb. The first hour and a half is excellently made political intrigue with gorgeous cinematography and fantastic acting, shot against the backdrop of the beautiful Vatican architecture.
The beautiful Vatican.
Yes. Ralph Fiennes is terrific as the dean, running the conclave and doing his best to unwind the various plots to sabotage the candidacies of several favorites. 9 out of 10 for this part of the movie. But the last 10 minutes is a bizarrely contrived, ham-fisted, progressive detour that will have you wondering if you're still watching the same film. 3 out of 10. Quote, the church is not tradition. The church is what we do next.
Do tomorrow.
Unquote. That's the character of the end. Yeah. That's just Kamala Harris tier word salad nonsense. Last sentence. Tedesco is the real hero.
Well, God bless that.
Thank you,
that
Thirst.
Commenter.
Hyphen.
There is room for everyone at the table of love. The only commitment you need to make is to not consciously harm anybody. And what's wrong with progress? I mean, the very nature of the religion that the Catholic Church is founded on is authored by a person who erupts into history and says there's more to life than you know, and there is more to who's in than you know, and so I think it would be antithetical to what the most noble hopes of this film are, to exclude that commenter, even though I think he's mistaken about
You would sit down and pray
about
with
the
him.
movie.
You would hold Thirst-Hyphen's hand.
I would hope
He
that
may not hold
Thirst-Hyphen-
yours, but
It's often the case that people then need to know they can trust their political opponents to care about them in the things that matter the most. And one of the problems we're living with right now is that electoral politics, you know, the misuse of power and the hoarding of power has become an idol for people to displace their experience of what it is to just live in the world and be neighbors with each other. And I'm all for the idea that, you know, you can have strongly divergent political views and still be kind. It's difficult when the leaders of your political parties aren't kind to each other in public, you know. And
well, you know, we're going to move on quickly. I know there's somebody we want to talk about, but it's difficult
Yes.
for people. You know, BET, there's for overseas listeners may not know, Black Entertainment Television. It's a channel here on the U.S., and they just had a Black Men's Summit I watched the other day. And one of the commenters on the summit talking about politics and the role of Black men in this country, how they're perceived and how to go forward. One of the folks I don't know if it was D.L. Huey who pointed this out, the comedian, or somebody else pointed out that, you know, someone like Donald Trump is what the system lauds as being heroic, someone who has a lot of money, somebody who can act decisively by firing somebody. And so the fault is not necessarily in Trump, but in the fact that we have this system that says these are the positive attributes of a leader. We need a better system.
well, we need a better story in which the system can nest.
Well, we need a better stories of systems. We need systems of stories.
We need a better systemic story system. How dare you shatter the harmony of this episode in the dying moments of us recording by by throwing the Discord into the place like a shattered window in a sequestered Vatican room by disagreeing with me about the difference between the word story and system.
Do you know, Gareth, not a month goes by when I don't wonder what happened to the sort of girlfriend/kept woman character of Gene Hackman in The Conversation. I wonder what happened to her, because she disappears. He goes back to her apartment and she's gone. That character was played by Teri Garr. Not a month goes by, I don't think about that character. Teri Garr, an astonishing performer for many reasons. Gareth, is she still with us?
She's still with us in the ways that will live on in our hearts. And of course, she died last week. She'd been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis a long time ago. And one would imagine that these last years were probably an enormous challenge for her. And in a strange way, you know, you project, what do you call these, parasocial relationships? You know, I never met Teri Garr. She and I were not friends. I'm assuming the same is true of you, or you probably would have told me, unless you've been carrying on a secret friendship with Teri Garr for all these years. But partly because you were.
No, but it's interesting. You're going to say parasocial, because we've never talked about Teri Garr before.
No.
And yet I felt that I had a parasocial relationship with her, because Teri Garr is the exact same age as my mother and looks just like my mother.
She does look like your mother.
And has the same mannerisms as my mom.
Yeah.
And dear listener, in her roles, Teri Garr sort of embodied a certain kind of woman that my mom is, that had to navigate patriarchal systems in order to succeed.
Emotionally immature men.
And deal with immature men, using her wit and her smarts, her coyness, and her sense of the real. The way, and Teri Garr in her films, look at her filmography, is amazing. The Conversation I've already mentioned, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Young Frankenstein, Mr. Mom, One from the Heart, Black Stallion, Tootsie. She embodied the real. You believe this was a real person. She was a funny person, and she was struggling, having to deal with living in the system where men where mediocre men are granted so much power. And she did it with a sort of witty joy, and that is also filled through with exasperation that is just wonderful. And I always, whenever I saw her, I always thought of her as analogous to my mom. So it's interesting that you mentioned this parasocial thing with her.
Well, I don't think I could say it better than you put it. Other than simply name, she's one of those actors who is a relief to see her on the screen. You know, if she's in something that's not great overall, she's the best thing about it, and she's also a kind of an anchor for everything else. My favorite Teri Garr performance is Tootsie. I would love it, Jett, if it's not, if it's okay. I'd love it if we could end our discussion of Teri Garr with a clip from Tootsie where she says, "I said good day, Dr. Brewster."
Sure, let's listen to that now.
You don't have a man, so you want to act like one.
You're wrong, Dr. Brewster. I'm very proud of being a woman.
All right, Sandy, wait a minute. Now, this guy treats you like dirt because you're a woman and he's a big doctor, right? But you don't have to take that. You can talk to him on his level.
Show me what you mean.
You're wrong, Doctor. What are you doing, a southern accent? You're wrong, Dr. Brewster. I'm very proud of being a woman.
See, I can't do it as good as you.
Yes, you can. Just turn the tables on him. Come on now, will you?
You're wrong, Dr. Brewster. I'm very proud of being a woman. Where am I? Oh.
I don't know what you're playing.
Well, I'm playing rage. I'm enraged. You told me to turn the tables on him, and I'm playing rage.
This is rage?
I have a problem with anger.
Yeah, you certainly do. But I'll tell you something. There's 100 other actresses reading for this part who don't have a problem with anger, who aren't afraid of working, who aren't afraid to stick everything out on the line and do it.
Well, don't get mad at me.
Well, stop being a doormat then.
I'm not a doormat.
Act right now. Do it.
You're wrong, Dr. Brewster. I am...
Go on.
You're wrong, Dr. Brewster.
What do I have to do? Hit you with a stick?
You're wrong, Dr. Brewster. I am very proud to be a woman, and I'm proud of this hospital. And before I see it destroyed by your petty tyrannies,
Have the anger. Don't show it to me. Don't
I'll
push.
recommend to the board that you be thrown out into the street.
Don't lose it now.
Good day, Dr. Brewster.
Don't whine like you're a second-rate
I
actress.
said good day.
Not bad. Pretty good.
Did you feel how much I hated you?
Yeah.
Did you really? You felt it? Oh,
Yeah, that's why I'm...
Now, wait a minute. Where are you going? How am I going to get it back tomorrow?
So that was Teri Garr. Still with us, Gareth?
She's still with us in our hearts, and you know, love and gratitude to people who knew her and cared for her.
Well, thanks for listening, dear listeners. This has been an interesting show, at least for me. I can't speak for Gareth, obviously, nor would I want to. But it's been an interesting show.
But if you did, what would you say?
I'd say it was an interesting show for you too. You know, folks, you can go to patreon.com/thefilmtalk to support us. You can get those bonus episodes. And we're also on Facebook at facebook.com/thefilmtalk. We're just about to end the show. I'm going to go for a walk, and I'm going to think about Gareth's question. It was just a one-word question. Why? Why did I fend off faith? Now, in Flash Gordon, Zarkov talks about, how did you do it? How did you defeat the machine? Like, well, I thought about the Beatles and things like that. Great art helped defeat the mind. You want to know how I defeated faith, Gareth? I thought about Zarkov and Flash Gordon. So that scene became the thing in itself. It's an Ouroboros of denial, and yet also living.
Our new show, Ouroboros of Denial, will begin on all your favorite podcast platforms whenever we get around to it. See what I got? See what I did there? See what I did there?
Smart, clever.
I've been Gareth Higgins.
I've been still faithless, but I'm getting concerned. Jett Lowe.
We'll keep talking
next time.